They told him his name was too long for a marquis. They told him his body was monstrous. They laughed at his accent and called it a disability. In 1970, Hollywood slammed the door and locked it. They said, "You will never be a leading man."
But while the world was busy saying no, Arnold Schwarzenegger was busy redefining the language of reality. He didn't just learn English, he hacked it. He turned a broken accent into a global brand and a robotic syntax into a political empire.
Welcome to English Between the Lines. Today, we are performing a forensic autopsy on 656 pages of pure will. This is the Total Recall Masterclass. We're moving past the celebrity gossip and going straight into the blueprint of a titan.
We are dissecting the Terminator syntax that dominated the box office, the real estate mindset that created a millionaire before the first movie, and the active voice that conquered the governor's mansion. If you think this is just a grammar lesson, you've already lost. This is about command.
Stop being a spectator of the language. Become the architect of your destiny.
Identify your vision. Ignore the naysayers.
Stay hungry. The training starts now. This is English Between the Lines. The Schwarzenegger Blueprint, Chapter 1, The Architect of Destiny. We begin with the soil. Not the fame, not the money, not the spotlight. The soil. Because before the empire, there was a small village. Arnold Schwarzenegger was born in 1947, Thal, Austria. Cold winters, stone houses, hard discipline. No indoor plumbing, no refrigerator, no luxury. Just structure, pressure, expectation. His father, Gustav, a police chief, strict, controlled, demanding. This was not California sunshine. This was friction.
And friction creates two types of people, those who shrink and those who sharpen. In linguistics, there's a concept we can call the language of scarcity. Scarcity builds a certain vocabulary. We don't have that. That's not possible. Be realistic. Those phrases seem harmless, but repeated enough times, they become identity. Arnold grew up surrounded by scarcity, but he did something rare. He changed the language.
One day, a poster changed everything. Reg Park, bodybuilder, actor, champion. Most people see a poster and admire it. Arnold saw a blueprint. He didn't see muscles. He saw a vehicle. He realized something powerful. Muscles could be currency. Currency buys freedom. Currency buys distance. Distance from a small town. Distance from limitation. In that moment, the decision was made. He would build himself into his exit strategy.
Now pay attention to the verbs. In Total Recall, Arnold doesn't say, "I worked out." He says, "I repped out." That matters. Reps means repetition. Again, again, again. In American culture, reps is grind language. It's the sound of progress. But here's the deeper layer. He didn't just lift weights, he visualized. When he did bicep curls, he didn't stare at his arm, he imagined it growing like a mountain. That's not motivation, that's mental architecture. There are two important words here: hypertrophy, muscle growth; threshold, the edge of pain. Arnold believed transformation begins at the threshold. Most people stop at discomfort. He began at discomfort. And that philosophy goes beyond the gym. If you only speak English when it feels easy, you stay average. If you stop when it gets uncomfortable, you never cross the threshold. Growth lives on the other side of strain.
The gym was freezing. No heating, basic equipment. Sometimes he broke ice on a lake just to swim afterward. Think about that. While others slept, he trained. While others relaxed, he built. This is not obsession. This is design. An architect sees the building before the world does. Arnold saw the champion before the trophy existed. Then came the test. He was serving in the Austrian army, but there was a competition. Junior Mr. Europe. He wanted it. He left without permission. He was arrested. Military prison. Concrete walls. Metal bars. And yet, he said, I was in a cell, but I was the champion. Pause on that. He did not say, I will be champion. He said, I was the champion. Identity before evidence. That is power.
This is internal syntax. Syntax is how words are arranged. Internal syntax is how thoughts are arranged. If your internal language says, I'm stuck, I'm unlucky, I'm limited, your actions follow that script. Arnold's internal syntax said, I am a champion, even in a prison cell. Environment did not control identity. Identity controlled environment.
The walls were temporary. The village was temporary. The poverty was temporary. But the blueprint, permanent. He did not drift. He directed. He did not react. He engineered. That's why this chapter matters. Because destiny is not found. It's constructed. Rep by rep. Choice by choice. Word by word.
Language builds structure. If you speak in passive voice, life happens to you. If I get lucky, if someone chooses me. But octave voice sounds different. I build, I choose, I design, I decide. Arnold lived in active voice long before Hollywood noticed him. That's the real blueprint.
Before the fame, before the movies, before the governorship, there was a cold gym, a frozen lake, a prison cell, and a decision. Not to accept the soil, but to redesign it. That's the lesson. You are either drifting or you are designing.
And the architect always wins.
Los Angeles. Palm trees. Smog. Opportunity. Arnold steps off the plane with two things: a massive body and a very small English vocabulary. He could bench press hundreds of pounds, but ordering food, that was a struggle. He didn't speak like a movie star. He didn't sound like a politician. He sounded foreign, heavy accent, limited words. But he had something far more valuable: hunger. Not physical hunger, immigrant hunger. The kind that doesn't complain, the kind that calculates. Most people assume Arnold lived in the gym. No, he lived in the market.
This chapter is where the book shifts. It stops being about muscles and starts being about positioning. Arnold understood something early. If you don't control the market controls you. He didn't just want to be strong, he wanted ownership. So what did he do? He and Franco Columbu started a bricklaying business. Not a glamorous move, but a strategic one. They didn't call it Arnold and Franco Construction. They called themselves European bricklayers. Listen carefully to that. European bricklayers. That name carried weight. Old world, craftsmanship, precision, elite skill. That's linguistic branding. They didn't just sell bricks, they sold identity. And identity justifies price. They charged more because perception allowed them to.
Most immigrants hustle. Arnold positioned. There's a difference. Hustle works harder. Positioning works smarter. He wasn't trying to survive. He was building capital. And here's the critical move. The money didn't go to flashy cars. It didn't go to nightlife. It didn't go to ego. It went to dirt, real estate. Because Arnold understood something most young men ignore. Muscles depreciate, property appreciates.
Now imagine this. At night, after training, after working construction, Arnold sought with a dictionary, reading real estate law, slowly, word by word. He didn't skip the difficult terms, he decoded them. That's what hunger looks like. Not motivation speeches, study, technical vocabulary, contract language. Because if you don't understand the contract, you don't control the deal. And if you don't control the deal, you don't control your future.
This is why the chapter is called The Real Estate of the Mind. Before he owned buildings, he owned definitions. He expanded his internal square footage, new words, new concepts, new financial frameworks. Most people rent their thinking. Arnold purchased his.
Now, let's talk about strategy. Arnold didn't rely on bodybuilding to pay for his life. That's crucial, because dependency weakens negotiation. He built multiple income streams: construction, real estate, competitions, later, investments. So when he entered acting, he wasn't desperate. Desperation changes your language. When you need something, your tone shifts. You beg, you over-explain, you compromise. Arnold didn't need a role to survive. That gave him the ultimate power in English, the power to walk away.
There's a story in the book. In his first acting class, the teacher told him, "Be more emotional." He replied, "I am a businessman." That answer sounds cold, but it reveals structure. He treated acting like a diversified portfolio. Bodybuilding was one asset, construction was another, real estate was another. Acting was simply an additional investment vehicle. He wasn't chasing fame, he was building equity.
This is advanced positioning. When you don't need approval, you operate differently. You don't audition from fear, you evaluate opportunities. You don't ask, "Do they like me?" You ask, "Is this aligned with my long-term strategy?" That mindset creates leverage, and leverage creates calm. Calm wins rooms.
Here's the deeper psychological shift. Arnold stopped thinking like a laborer and started thinking like an owner. Laborers trade time for money. Owners trade systems for freedom. He built systems early: rental income, brand perception, business partnerships. He wasn't trying to look rich, he was trying to become untouchable.
And here's the linguistic layer. Notice the prefix out. He didn't just outwork, he out-invested, he out-positioned, he out-learned. The out strategy means I will exceed the standard on a strategic axis. Most competitors focus on one axis. Arnold added multiple. Physical dominance, financial literacy, brand control, market positioning. He widened the battlefield. And when you widen the battlefield, you increase your advantage.
Think about the psychology of real estate. It's slow, it's patient, it rewards discipline. That mirrored his training philosophy. Reps build muscle, rent builds freedom, threshold in the gym, threshold in investing. Pain now, power later. He applied the same framework everywhere. That's coherence.
And here's the quiet truth. Arnold did not come to America just to participate. He came to own. First his body, then his business, then his property, then his narrative. He understood that if you don't own assets, you are the asset, and assets get used. Owners decide.
By the time Hollywood began noticing him, he was already financially stable. That stability made him dangerous because he could say no, and the person who can say no holds the frame. He didn't accept roles that shrank him. He negotiated. He waited. He built momentum elsewhere. That patience changed the trajectory of his career.
Let's translate this to your life. What is your real estate? Not physical property, mental territory. vocabulary, financial literacy, skills stacking. Are you renting your future or building equity in yourself because the mind appreciates when you invest in it?
A young immigrant lands in Los Angeles. Limited English, heavy accent, unknown name, but internally, strategic, disciplined, calculated. He wasn't trying to impress the room, he was buying the building.
Before fame, before movies, before politics, there was leverage, there was positioning, there was market intelligence. He didn't just build muscle, he built margin, and margin creates freedom.
This is the lesson of Chapter 2. Don't just strengthen your body. Don't just improve your English. Acquire assets. Acquire leverage. Acquire optionality. Because when you own the real estate of your mind, the external world becomes negotiable. Chapter 3. The Terminator Syntax. Chapter 3. The Terminator Syntax. 1982 to 1984. The Explosion. Conan. The Terminator. This is where everything changed. The bodybuilder became a global presence. The accent became recognizable. The silhouette became iconic. But this was also the moment the world tried to reduce him, to label him, to shrink him into a box. Action meathead. Muscle. Minimal brain. Maximum violence. But one director saw something else. James Cameron didn't see a stereotype. He saw efficiency. He saw linguistic precision. He saw something mechanical, something controlled, something unforgettable.
Let's perform surgery. Not on the body, on the syntax. The Terminator barely speaks. Very few lines, very few words. Why? Because machines don't hesitate. Machines don't soften. Machines don't decorate. They don't say, I think, maybe, perhaps. Those are function words, human cushioning words, emotional buffers. The Terminator removes them. That's the content word rule. Machines use nouns, verbs, direct commands. Target acquired. Stay here. I'll be back. Notice the weight. Every sentence lands. No apology, no softness, no uncertainty, just direction.
This wasn't accidental. Arnold understood something critical. Silence creates mass. When you speak constantly, your words lose density. When you speak selectively, your words gain gravity. In The Terminator, he doesn't negotiate, he declares. He doesn't discuss, he delivers. And because he speaks less, each line becomes memorable. Efficiency became identity.
Now let's talk about tone. Arnold practiced his lines thousands of times, not just memorizing, engineering. He wanted zero uptalk. Uptalk is when your voice rises at the end of a sentence, like you're asking a question, even when you're not. It signals uncertainty. It invites doubt. Arnold did the opposite. Downward inflection. Every sentence ended with gravity, with finality, with a period. It sounded like physics, like inevitability, like law. That's not acting. That's vocal positioning.
Think about this. At that time, his accent was considered a liability. Too heavy, too foreign, too strange. Studios told him to change it, neutralize it, soften it. But the Terminator flipped the narrative. The accent wasn't weakness. It became mechanical, cold, inhuman, memorable. He turned a linguistic deficit into a unique selling proposition, a USP. Nobody else sounded like that. Nobody else delivered lines like that. Scarcity creates value, and Arnold's voice was scarce.
Now, here's the deeper linguistic layer. Humans often overuse function words. I just wanted to. I kind of feel. I was maybe thinking. Those phrases shrink authority. They dilute intention. The Terminator syntax removes them. It compresses language. Compression creates impact. When you remove fluff, meaning intensifies. That's why I'll be back became legendary. 3 words, no explanation, no emotion, just inevitability.
The power of minimalism. Arnold didn't compete with dramatic actors by being more emotional. He competed by being more controlled. In Conan, dialogue was limited. Physical presence carried scenes. In The Terminator, silence carried threat. He wasn't acting like a human. He was acting like inevitability. That distinction matters. Let's analyze authority through tone. Authority is not loudness, it's certainty. Certainty comes from vocal control, downward pitch at the end of sentences, slower pacing, strategic pauses, no verbal fillers, no no like, no you know. Arnold's delivery had structure. It felt premeditated, measured, and when speech feels measured, it feels powerful. Imagine 2 versions of the same sentence, I'll be back versus I'll be back. The first asks permission, the second makes a promise. One sounds unsure, the other sounds inevitable. That small tonal shift changes perception completely. Arnold mastered that, not academically, practically, through repetition, through rehearsal, through obsession.
There's another layer, silence as intimidation. In negotiation psychology, the person comfortable with silence often controls the interaction. Arnold's characters pause, they look, they assess, they don't rush to fill space. Most people rush to fill silence because silence feels uncomfortable. Arnold weaponized that discomfort. He let others feel it. And in that space, he held dominance.
The industry thought he was limited, but limits create style. Because he didn't have broad emotional range in English, he sharpened precision. Because he didn't sound like everyone else, he became unforgettable. Because he couldn't blend in, he stood out. Constraints shaped brand.
Now let's translate this. If you want authority in English, reduce verbal clutter. Stop apologizing with tone. Drop your pitch at the end. End sentences with certainty. Pause deliberately. Let silence breathe. That's the Terminator tone. It radiates control. Control radiates confidence. Confidence attracts attention.
Arnold understood something subtle. You don't always win by adding more. Sometimes you win by subtracting. Subtract excess words, subtract hesitation, subtract emotional leakage. What remains is clarity, and clarity feels strong. In a noisy industry, he became quiet. In a crowded field, he became distinct.
And here's the irony. The same accent that once limited him became global branding. You can imitate Arnold's voice instantly. That's market power, recognition within seconds, no introduction required. He didn't erase difference, he amplified it strategically.
Think about how this applies beyond film, in business, in negotiation, in leadership. The person who speaks clearly, briefly, and confidently often leads. Length does not equal authority. Precision does. Arnold's syntax was precise: minimal words, maximum impact.
Let's go deeper. Language shapes perception. Perception shapes reality. When you speak like a question mark, you are treated like a question mark. When you speak like a period, you are treated like a statement. Arnold became a period, firm, complete, unarguable.
From 1982 to 1984, the world saw muscles, but underneath there was strategy, voice training, delivery engineering, brand alignment. He didn't randomly become iconic, he optimized. Optimized lines, optimized tone, optimized silence. That's why the explosion happened. Not luck, structure.
And notice this, the Terminator doesn't explain himself, he acts. Action plus minimal speech creates mystique. Mystique creates curiosity. Curiosity creates demand. Demand creates leverage. Leverage creates power. It's a chain reaction, and it started with syntax.
Chapter 3 teaches this: you don't need more words, you need heavier words. You don't need louder tone, you need lower tone. You don't need approval, you need certainty. Arnold turned limitation into identity, accent into asset, silence into strategy, syntax into dominance.
If you want authority in English, stop asking for permission. Stop cushioning your sentences. Stop ending statements like questions. Drop the pitch. Slow the delivery. Let silence amplify impact. That is the Terminator syntax. Minimal, measured, inevitable.
From immigrant outsider to cinematic icon, the shift wasn't just physical, it was linguistic. He didn't just build muscle, he built mass in his words. And when words carry mass, rooms shift. Own your syntax, control your tone, engineer your silence, because certainty, when delivered properly, is unstoppable. Chapter 4: The Governator's Decree, a 10-minute deep episode. 2003. California is in crisis. Budget disaster, energy problems, political chaos. And then, on live television, Arnold makes his move. Not in a campaign office, not at a press conference, on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. That was not random, that was strategy. They called him a celebrity. He called himself a servant. The shock announcement.
The political class laughed. Hollywood actor, thick accent, no experience. But Arnold understood something they didn't. Name recognition is political currency, and he had millions in the bank. He bypassed traditional politics. He went straight to the people. Prime time, national audience, direct message. No gatekeepers. That's media leverage.
From action hero to policy student, here's where the book gets serious. Arnold knew muscles weren't enough. Movies weren't enough. Confidence wasn't enough. He had to learn a new language, policy speak. Words like fiscal responsibility, structural deficit, bond measures, gerrymandering, special interests. He treated politics the same way he treated bodybuilding. Total immersion. He met economists, advisors, legal experts. He asked questions. He took notes. He studied charts. Not to sound smart, to understand the system.
The metaphoric bridge. Now here's the genius move. Arnold knew voters don't think in spreadsheets. They think in stories. So he used what we call the metaphoric bridge. Instead of explaining California's budget like a professor, he explained it like a family budget. If you spend more than you earn, you go into debt. Simple, relatable, memorable. He translated complexity into kitchen table English. That's not dumbing things down, that's power communication.
The recall election of 2003 was historic. And when Arnold won, he didn't just win by little, he won decisively. He went from movie sets to the California state capitol,
from "I'll be back" to "I hereby swear." But here's what fascinates me. He didn't shrink to fit the office. He expanded into it.
The language of power is state. Arnold writes about walking into rooms with world leaders, presidents, prime ministers, power players, and he realized something profound. The language of power is not vocabulary, it's state. State means your internal posture. Are you entering the room to impress, or are you entering to serve? Arnold walked in as governor, but internally he was still 7-time Mr. Olympia, disciplined, prepared, certain. That certainty changes how people respond to you. Power is often perceived before it is spoken.
Humor as armor. Now let's talk about survival. Politics is brutal. You're attacked daily. Media criticism, opposition attacks, public mistakes. Arnold had a weapon most politicians lack: humor. When he mispronounced a word, he laughed. When someone mocked his accent, he joked about it first. That's called self-deprecation, and it's strategic. When you laugh at yourself, critics lose ammunition. When you show humanity, people relax. In American politics, fear kills popularity, but laughter builds connection.
The accent advantage. Let's be honest, his accent was still strong. But by 2003, it wasn't a weakness. It was branding. When Arnold said something about taxes, it sounded different, distinct, memorable. He had turned what once limited him into a signature. That's evolution. First, you survive your difference. Then you monetize it. Then you weaponize it.
Governing is not acting. Here's something powerful from the book. Arnold says being governor was harder than any movie. Why? Because there are no retakes. You can't yell cut. Budgets affect schools, infrastructure, jobs, healthcare. Every decision is real. Consequences are real. That pressure forces clarity, and clarity forces growth.
The discipline transfer. Arnold's secret wasn't politics, it was transferable discipline. Bodybuilding taught him long-term vision, delayed gratification, tolerance for pain, relentless routine. He applied that to business, then to acting, then to government. Same engine, different arena. That's the pattern of his life.
The rebranding of power. In Hollywood, he was the strongest man in the room. In politics, strength had to look different. Strength became listening, negotiating, compromising, staying calm under attack. Physical dominance became emotional control. That's evolution.
The real lesson of the Governator. People focus on whether his policies worked, but the deeper lesson is transformation. Arnold reinvented himself again, from immigrant to champion to millionaire to movie icon to governor. Each time the world said, "That's impossible." Each time he said, "Watch me."
The real lesson of the Governator. People focus on whether his policies worked, but the deeper lesson is transformation. Arnold reinvented himself again, from immigrant to champion to millionaire to movie icon to governor. Each time the world said, "That's impossible." Each time he said, "Watch me."
Final reflection. The Governator wasn't a joke, it was a bridge. It combined myth and office, entertainment and authority. And that's something uniquely American, reinvention at scale. Arnold didn't abandon who he was, he upgraded it.
Chapter 4 teaches us this. Power is not titles. It's about preparation, meeting opportunity. Arnold prepared for decades, so when California needed a new narrative, he was ready to deliver it.
And whether you agree with his politics or not, you cannot deny the pattern. He doesn't enter rooms quietly, he enters them deliberately, and he leaves them different than he found them. That is the Governator's decree.
Chapter 5. The Language of Legacy. The Final Act. The public life slows down. The private life breaks open. The secret son, the divorce, the headlines.
And suddenly, the strongest man in the room is alone in a very large house. This part of Total Recall doesn't read like a victory speech. It reads like a confession. Radical accountability.
The language changes here. No more conquest, no more domination. Now we hear something else. Radical accountability. Notice the syntax shift. He doesn't say, mistakes were made. He says, I failed my family. That's the no excuse syntax. No passive voice, no hiding, no blaming circumstances. Just ownership. That's linguistic maturity.
From alpha to omega. Earlier in life, Arnold spoke alpha. Alpha language is about winning, dominating, expanding, outperforming. But this chapter? This is omega language. Omega is about endurance, reflection, repair, forgiveness. Alpha builds empires. Omega sustains meaning. And this is the evolution most powerful people struggle to make.
He's in his late 70s now. And what does his day look like? He wakes up early, feeds his donkey Lulu, feeds his pig Cherry, trains every morning. But the purpose has shifted. He's no longer building muscle for a stage. He's building longevity. Training is no longer about trophies. It's about health, mobility, energy, time. That's another linguistic shift, from performance to preservation.
The anti-self-made manifesto. Here's the most powerful idea in the final chapter. Arnold dismantles the myth of the self-made man. For decades, he said, I did this, I built that, I won. Now, he widens the frame. He talks about mentors, about opportunity, about doors opened by others. He acknowledges figures like Joe Weider, who gave him his start in America, and global leaders like Nelson Mandela, who shaped his understanding of forgiveness and service. The pronoun changes from I to we. That's legacy language.
The word useful. His final philosophy is simple. Stay hungry, stay healthy, and be useful. Look at that last word, useful. Not famous, not powerful, not dominant. Useful. In English, useful sounds small, ordinary. But for Arnold, it's the highest rank. To be useful means you contribute, you improve something, you serve beyond yourself. That's the final upgrade, from ambition to contribution.
The bonus. The anatomy of an Arnoldism.
Let's break down the mechanics. What makes Arnold sound like Arnold? The Schwa rebellion. In American English, we use something called the Schwa sound. About, problem, support. Most syllables soften. Arnold doesn't soften them. He stretches vowels. He gives syllables full weight. Every word sounds carved from stone. He never dissolved into the American mumble. And instead of weakening him, it made him unforgettable. It gave his speech gravity.
We've traveled 80 years in 40 minutes, from the frozen lakes of Austria to the sun-drenched hills of California. We've seen a man turn his body into a monument, his accent into a brand, and his life into a blueprint.
But as we close the cover on Total Recall, remember this. Arnold's secret wasn't his genetics. It wasn't even his luck. It was his syntax. He refused to speak the language of maybe. He deleted the vocabulary of I'll try. He lived his life in the active voice.
So, as you step back into your world today, don't just leave this audio in your ears. Take it into your life. The next time someone tells you no, remember the naysayers in Arnold's gym. The next time you feel like drifting, find your visionary noun.
If this masterclass shifted your perspective, do 3 things right now to lock in that Arnold mindset. Command the algorithm, hit the like button, and subscribe. Don't just watch, be an active participant in this community. The linguistic challenge. Go to the comments and type your visionary goal using the active voice. No I want, no I hope. Use I will. Outshare the competition. Send this episode to one person who needs to stop drifting and start commanding their destiny.
The book is closed. The gym is empty, but your training has just begun.
We are Liam and Emma, and this is English Between the Lines.
Stay hungry. Class dismissed.